Okay. All right, welcome everyone to the December 16th, 2025 Landmark Preservation Commission meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. First, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large. Lars?
I am Lars Billman. I am a general contractor and business owner. I was nominated by Mayor's Office.
Emily Hazen, preservationist and designer, nominated by City Planning.
I'm Bree Saban, interior designer and project manager, and I was nominated by Denver Planning Board.
I'm Elizabeth Caswell-Dyer. I'm a business owner, and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
My name is Chris McGinnis. I'm a forensic architect, and I was nominated by the Mayor's Office.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I am Brittany Bryant, and I'm Denver Landmark Preservation staff. And we have just been asked to speak up a little bit.
Okay. All right. First, we'll begin with any general comments from commission or staff that you'd like to make before we get going on our agenda.
So I do have two announcements. So the first one is regarding the design guidelines. So I did want to let the commission know that we are going to take a brief pause in adopting the design guidelines to ensure that the layout is finalized and edited correctly. So we had initially anticipated a public hearing at the January 6th LPC meeting. However, we don't want the commissioners, members of the public, or staff reviewing the draft over the holidays. So as a result, we're delaying the public hearing to a likely date at one of the February LPC meetings, but more information will be provided as the schedule is finalized. Just as a reminder, the draft must be filed with the clerk and recorder at least 20 days prior to the public hearing, so you will have sufficient notice when we are ready to roll with that public hearing. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, I'm happy to hear feedback on that. Again, we're just taking a brief pause to do with the transferring of the current layout into the new layout. So that is the first announcement. Any questions, concerns on that one? Okay. And then the next announcement is I just want to sincerely thank everyone for your time and dedication this past year. Your thoughtful review, discussion, and commitment to the commission's work are greatly appreciated, and your efforts play an important role in advancing our shared goals. And over the course of 24 meetings, 23 regular meetings, and one joint meeting with the LDDRC, the commission has reviewed 228 agenda items. Of course, we will provide a more in-depth year-end review early next year, but I wanted to take a moment to offer a sincere thank you for your time and dedication and service, and I look forward to continue working with you in the coming year, and I know the rest of staff feels very similar. So that's my announcements.
Thank you, Brittany.
Ditto.
Yeah, I'm sure we all would agree that we thank the staff for everything that you guys do. All the work you put into making us sure we know what we need to know. So, yeah. Commissioners, usually I ask ahead of time if there's any items on the agenda that you need to recuse yourself from or announce any ex parte contacts. I'll just say that I will need to recuse myself from the business item regarding the Wellshire Golf Course, but is there anyone else that needs to let us know? Okay, great. All right, we are ready to then move on to meeting records. We had one meeting record from our last meeting of December 2nd for review. Are there any comments or corrections that commissioners would like to see regarding that meeting record? not, would someone like to make a motion? Oh, we don't need to, yeah, I always forget. Okay, never mind, we are all good with the meeting record. All right. Next, I'll give some audio tips for those of you joining us virtually. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your device. From there, you can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu where you can add background noise suppression and test your speaker and microphone devices to adjust their volume output. For presenters or public commenters, when it's your turn to speak, you can unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. And you can also expand the menu next to the microphone to reveal additional options, such as selecting your speaker and microphone devices and testing their maximum output volumes. If you are still having audio challenges, we suggest that you switch to phone for audio. At this point in our meeting, we welcome the public to make any comments they would like to about either historic preservation in general or any items on our agenda item today, including consent review, design review, and business items. You will have up to 2 minutes to speak if you would like to speak. We will start with those in person, but if you are joining virtually and would like to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand button by clicking the button in Zoom, or you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. Please email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having difficulty with either of these hand raise options. Is there anyone here in person who would like to make a general comment about preservation or about any of our agenda items if you're not part of an applicant team? All right. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment? Doesn't look like it. Okay, great. We are ready to move on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of routine projects that Landmark staff has determined to meet the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts and are recommended for commission approval without discussion. However, commissioners may ask to have any item removed from the consent agenda and move to design review. First, I'll announce the entire consent agenda. We have application 2025-COA-1017 at 2949 West 33rd Avenue in the Potter Highlands District. 2025-COA-867 at 190 West Archer Place in the Baker neighborhood. 2025-ZLAM-109 at 2529 235 West 35th Avenue in Potter Highlands. The National Register nomination for 933 East 24th Avenue, also known as Zion Baptist Church. Application 2025-TAXC-037 at 3225 West 23rd Avenue in Whittier Cofield. 2025-TAXC-036 at 630 North Gaylord Street in East 7th Avenue District, and 2025-TAXC-034 at 544 Circle Drive in Country Club. Commissioners, do you have any conflicts of interest on any of these items? Are there any items that a commissioner would like to have removed from consent agenda for regular design review? Right. Would someone then like to make a motion?
To approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes. If your project is part of this agenda, you have been approved and you're welcome to leave the meeting. However, you're also welcome to stay and listen in on the rest. All right, we have one violation project to consider. These are items for which a notice of violation has been issued by the Zoning and Neighborhood Inspection Services. They require an individual consideration and approval or correction if necessary to achieve compliance with the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts. We have one violation project. This is 2025-COA-715 at 3034 North Meade Street. First, we'll hear from staff who will introduce the application and their recommendation, after which commissioners may question staff. Then we'll hear from the applicant, who will have up to 10 minutes for their presentation, after which commissioners may question the applicant. We'll hear from staff for any clarifications if needed before we move into a deliberation and then motion and vote. So we'll hear from Jessie regarding this project.
So pictured here is 3034 Meade Street. It's an NADB property located in the Wolf Place Historic District. The commission will review the proposed remedial plan and later phase 1 mass form and context for this site for a new tandem house structure at the front of the lot. Staff would like to note that the applicant is proposing to change the historic building's use to a secondary structure. And while landmark usually doesn't review use because zoning does not allow a secondary structure on the lot without a primary structure first, we're reviewing this as part of the changes to this building. That's also why we do have this violation. Typically, we review violation cases at the end of the agenda, but we've moved this up because we have to approve the phase 1 right after we've reviewed this remedial plan for the application. Next slide. So as I said, this is located in the Wolf Place Historic District. It was added to the neglected and derelict building list in 2021. The building is a Queen Anne style alley house constructed in 1895. And as a reminder, it did go through the RNO. This application didn't go through the RNO review process. The phase 1 mass form and context did. RNO review is not required for remedial plans, but I'll get into the RNO review once we hit phase 1 mass form and context. So in 2019, the property owner did request permission to demolish the structure. The commission denied that request, citing sign guidelines 2.55 and section 30-11 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code. The applicant has changed their proposal to restoring the existing alley house on the lot. They are proposing to demolish a portion of this building, non-historic additions, and converting that and adding a new addition that would convert it into a garage structure. So staff is recommending conditional approval of this application, and I'll spend the next few slides going over the application review. So the applicant proposes to demolish non-historic rear additions, and they want to build a new addition in their place. The non-historic addition measures 19 feet 1 3/8 inch by 20 feet 1 1/4 inch, and will be 13 feet in height. And the new addition measures 13 feet 7 inches by 20 feet 1 1/4, and will be 9 feet in height. Next slide. So early Sanborn fire insurance maps do show that the building originally had a 1-story frame wing at the rear. However, current photos indicate the wing has been heavily altered or possibly replaced outside of the period of significance. A 1-story brick addition was later added to the north side, and the existing rear wing appears to have been altered and replaced, as suggested by the presence of asbestos siding over fiberboard sheeting and the wide window proportions. Landmark staff estimate these changes occurred between the 1940s and 1950s, or 1960s rather. Due to the extent of the alterations and the current condition of the wing at the back of the building. Landmark staff would consider this wing as non-contributing and support its demolition. Next slide. So the applicant plans to construct a new one-story flat roof addition in its place. The addition footprint will measure 13 feet 7 inches by 20 feet 1 1/4 and will be 9 feet in height, as I mentioned before. It will have an EPDM roof with smooth finish fiber cement board and batten siding. The windows will be 1/1 aluminum clad windows, and the garage door will be a steel flush panel door. They're also adding a 200 amp electrical panel that will be added to the east elevation. And this is just the existing and proposed elevations for the front and rear addition. Obviously, there are no changes proposed for the front of the building. Next slide. And these are the existing and proposed side elevations showing that addition. Next slide. And then one final part of the application materials are the materials and finishes pages. On the left, you can see the proposed materials and finishes for the historic structure. And on the right, you can see the proposed materials and finishes for the addition. Next slide. So now I'm going to go over what guidelines are being met or not met for this application. So the remedial plan proposes to preserve and repair historic building materials using preservation best practices outlined in the guidelines in the National Park Service's preservation briefs. And we're citing guidelines 2.1 through 2.3, 2.7, 2.8, 2.25, 2.26, 2.37, and 2.38. Next slide. The remedial plan also proposes to replace damaged materials with historically appropriate materials, guideline 2.23, and replace non-historic materials with compatible materials, guideline 2.20. Next slide. Moving on to the proposed addition, the new addition is subordinate in size, guidelines 3.1 and 3.9. It respects historic features, guidelines 3.3 and 3.5. It is recognizable as a new addition, guideline 3.4, and is compatible with the historic structure and surrounding construction defects, guidelines 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, and 3.10. Next slide. So with that, staff is recommending conditional approval of the remedial plan and the addition with the condition that the primary structure be approved and permitted prior to conversion of the alley house into a garage. As I said previously, they cannot convert this into a secondary use without a primary structure on the lot for zoning.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? I had one question regarding the shingle siding on in the gable ends. Is that asphalt or wood? And is that part of any of this work dealing with that?
So if you will go back to, there's a page with close-up photos of the windows, Brittany. So you can see on the upper right-hand corner, there is an asphalt shingle over top. The non-historic windows that were put in, they peeled back more of that asbestos, or not asbestos, the asphalt shingle siding. And you can see that there's wood shingles intact, straight edge wood shingles intact underneath. Those are likely historic to the building. We are not sure what the condition is. So in the remedial plan, I believe on the materials page and then elsewhere in the remedial plan, it does state that they will do some exploratory work to see what that condition is. If it's restorable, they will restore it. If it is beyond repair, then they will replace it, and they will replace it with that wood cedar shingle to match.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, all right, I think we're ready to hear from the applicants. same person. If you would please begin with your names and then we'll have 10 minutes. Yeah. Hang tight.
Hi.
Just a second, sorry, wanna make sure got you all ready, so.
And I will change slides for you when you are ready.
Perfect. My name is David Burton. I'm an architect and developer in Denver. Address 2899 North Spear Boulevard. The owner of this project started this project years before we were involved. We just got involved with this project a few months ago. The others introduce.
I'm Adam Burton, work with Real Architecture. I've been on this project since we've taken the lead here and have a couple notes just in regards to our design process throughout this project.
I'm Jeff Curtis. I was hired by the owner to project manage and move things along.
Slide. I won't go over it too much because Jesse gave a great explanation of the remedial plan for this project. But basically we're looking at the contributing mass of the structure and preserving that in its entirety and removing that non-contributing portion. A few notes that we found, including the mismatched materials. We also noted that the rear portion is a wood on dirt structural system, which could also be potentially putting strain on that existing contributing mass. That and the excuse me, the possibility of moisture infiltration as well as other just poor quality construction that could be potentially bringing the character and ability to preserve that existing structure down. Our guideline or our plan is to preserve the long-term stability and preservation of that continuing mass while allowing it to perform as a secondary structure for our owners' continued use.
So the existing building has been fully gutted, as Adam said. The rear portion is joists on dirt with no foundation, and the front portion is an original brick structure with 2x10 roof rafters and a 1x6 ridge still intact. So we'll preserve that and restore that piece and tie in the new proposed addition on the back. Again, meeting design guidelines of a new addition to an existing structure.
On this lower site plan, you can also see our proposed primary structure that I'll touch on a bit just to give us a sense of kind of the whole project scope. But you can see that that lighter blue portion on the lower site plan is the garage addition that will also comply with current zoning setbacks from the alley and hopefully not take away any of the historic character of that current structure. Next slide, please. Again, you guys have seen these, preserving the historic elevation and then converting that new rear alley facing elevation to a garage. Next slide. I'll jump into it a bit just to give an overview, but this is for the some of the context. Looking at our rigorous study of the nested gable Queen Anne style homes or in and around the Wolf Place Historic District. The hand-drawn studies we looked at for facade proportions, gable ratios, window grouping, shapes and sizes, as well as covered entry forms. This ensured that design is grounded in the specific architectural language of the district and not generalized Victorian motifs. These elements highlighted in blue are the direct elements that influence our proposal. And on the right, you can see the early iteration of our street-facing facade, which we further refined with staff feedback. Importantly, the owner had a strong interest in the nested gable form with a covered entry and an arch window. Our contextualized study allowed us to realize these preferences in a way that remains respectful to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Here you can see how those refinements shape the final facade. We incorporated proportional cues from the study, including the paired upper windows.
Excuse me, I just want to let you know that we will be talking about this design at our next agenda item. So if you don't, you'll be welcome to talk about it then, but maybe use this time to just talk anything further about this remedial plan that you have.
Yeah, I think that's it for the remedial plan. We just kind of wanted to get an overview so the jury gets a sense of kind of the whole scope of our project here. Thank you. Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioners, did you have any questions for the applicant at this time about the remedial plan?
Just was wondering if, what's the strategy for if you're cutting out, or you're removing the sort of back portion that's non-contributing, supporting the gable above that? Is that something that you guys have kind
Right now, there's no back wall there.
Yeah.
So it's being supported by a beam that is essentially between the new and the old. We'll have to see what that is and stabilize that for sure, but there's no, it's wide open front to back right now.
Yeah, my question or concern was, I guess both. The question is, I understand the processes for restoring the brick and the mortar, as you guys have explained, but the brick from the photos looks in pretty bad shape and pretty rough shape, just full of the cracks and everything. So are you guys, let's say we start to peel that paint away, and we understand the brick is rather deteriorated. Is there kind of a backup plan? Because I think not only for the brick, but also for the wood siding on the front facade, I have a feeling it's going to be very deteriorated as well, since it's been entrapped behind that other asphalt shingles for quite some time.
Sure. Right now, the brick is all painted and we don't intend to remove the painted sand brick. So we intend to repair it as needed and repaint the facade.
Have you tried to remove any of it already, just to see what you're working with?
No, we haven't, but the interior is unpainted, so we can see what it is on the inside. It's definitely, lime mortar and sand brick. So it's not face hard brick. We've tried over the years to remove paint. Now, we've used a couple different methods over the years. I don't know that we intend to do that on this small of a building,
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Jesse, did you have any clarifications or further comments that you'd like to make before we deliberate? All right, you're welcome to go back and we'll bring you back on for the all right, commissioners, what are your thoughts on this remedial plan?
I don't know, I think it just needs honestly needs a little bit more vetting and due diligence. If you zoom in on that one, see what sheet this is. The photos on whatever, I don't know what sheet number it is. That's the C9 repair. So they have raised mortar joints, right? Which when painted are gonna come off basically, right? And then the face of the brick is just really deteriorated, and you could tell that I don't know, that it's in really bad shape. So I just kind of am not very optimistic about the remedial plan with low pressure water and some hand scrubbing without damaging, I don't know, the brick even more than it probably already is.
Just to repeat what they said, though, that they're not planning to remove the paint, I gather, unless it's like needed in certain repair spots. So
I thought it said it was planning on remove, so they're not removing the paint. that's fine, I'm misunderstanding that.
Does that change anything for you, Chris, or?
No, I mean, it's like, well, I'm just trying to figure out if you're gonna replace the windows, right, and you're not gonna touch any of the brick. Okay, maybe it's gonna be all right, and are you gonna kind of go back and match the paint at that point?
I believe they're repainting it.
So just gonna paint over top of what's already there,
Which we don't have purview over.
yeah.
Because it does not require any type of permit. So therefore, it's not something we are legally allowed to review painting, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't have any further comment about that then, I mean, I guess I misunderstood that.
Any other thoughts, Larry?
It seems like it straightforwardly meets the guidelines, and I think it's, combination of what we're about to review next is a really neat way to kind of incorporate that historic structure into something that's more productive for the neighborhood, so yeah.
Okay, unless anyone else wants to jump in with a comment, would someone like to make a motion?
I don't disagree with
Okay,
everything.
sorry, Nick.
No, that anything that's been said so far. But my fingers are crossed that you've thought about it all structurally, because we had no insight into that. There are no sections through the garage, the new part, as it marries to the old part. And sections that would explain that structure's been allowed for that flat roof and slope for the drainage and so on. So, I just, my fingers are crossed for you. You don't have to come back to us with a height adjustment or something like that. That would necessitate.
Thanks, Nick.
I'm still like, if you guys look at some of this, like the rising damp issues along the elevations here, where the paint is just completely peeling off, and it looks like the brick is no longer even mortared to the, just painting over all this stuff just raises concerns for me, I mean, just in general. I don't know, what is that gonna do? We don't know what's underlying, right? We don't know what it is structurally. We're just gonna slap it over and say, let's forget about it. And I understand it's not in our purview, they want to paint or not, but the brick looks really rough.
I mean, it will have to go through structural review for the addition and everything, so. I don't know if that makes Nick and Chris feel a little bit better. Or building permit.
I mean, I guess I'll say that I completely understand the concerns that you've raised, and it seems like the best we can do at this point is provide that as a warning to the applicants and hope that they are prepared to address anything that comes up as they move forward. But given what we've heard, I'm not sure we can see more.
Okay, yeah, I just surprised nobody else is like has this kind of similar concerns about like, we're just concealing something we know nothing about, right? And I think that's
I think they're not gonna know until they know. You cannot just flow chart all
but
the
we've already
options
approved
out.
something that
Yeah.
may not be right at that point.
They're following the guidelines. Some of the stuff is out of our purview. I would not be surprised if they don't end up back here, but it won't be for lack of trying. And that's really all you can do with something this deteriorated. They'll just have to come back if they come across something that has to come in front of us. And it's just the nature of the project they've undertaken, I think.
I'm not gonna beat it up anymore.
Would someone like to make a motion? Have this motion here. Okay.
I move to approve with conditions application 2025 COA 715 for the remedial plan and new addition 3034 North Mead Street as per design guidelines 2.1 to 2.3, 2.7, 2.8, 2.20, 2.23, 2.25, 2.26, 2.37, 2.38, 3.1, 3.3 through 3.10, presented testimonies, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the condition that a primary structure be approved and permitted prior to the conversion of the alley house into a garage structure.
Thank you, Bree. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is opposed. Anyone else? So the motion passes with approval of conditions. We are now ready to move on to our design review agenda, which the first, I'll go through this process and then we'll move into the first one. So these are items that require individual consideration by the commission and are reviewed and discussed separately, each one before a motion vote. So the process, I'll announce the design review agenda item by address. We'll hear from staff who will introduce the application and their recommendation, after which commissioners may question staff. We will then hear from the applicant, who will have up to 10 minutes to give their presentation, after which commissioners may question the applicant. We'll then hear any staff clarifications if needed before we move into a deliberation for motion and vote. So our first design review item is the infill project for what was the remedial plan at 3034 North Mead Street in Wolf Place. Jessie.
Preemptively sat down too soon. So now I'm gonna move on to the proposed tandem house that will be forward of the historic alley house at 3034 Mead Street. And here is the district map, and you can see that kind of like setback site. So you can see the alley house is quite set back from the front of the lot. Next slide. So just quickly, I'll go over the site information again. This is a contributing building, or the alley house that's on the lot existing is a contributing Queen Anne style building to the Wolf Place Historic District. It was built in 1895. The applicant is proposing to restore that alley house and construct a new tandem house structure in front of it. The commission in this portion will be reviewing phase 1 mass forming context for that tandem house. This project was referred to the RNO on September 1st, 2025, and the RNO is recommending denial of the request. A copy of the RNO comments were included in the application materials for the commission's review. Just to put in a clarifying note here that while the RNO did talk about the remedial plan, the historic building on the site, they reference guidelines from chapter 2 as well as chapter 4. The RNO's review and purview is only limited to the new structure on the site. We do not refer for RNO review remedial plans or violation cases. Just wanted to make that clear. Staff is recommending approval of this request, and we'll spend the next few slides going over our findings. So next slide. Just going over the project scope briefly here. These are the proposed site plans and floor plans. Next slide. And then here are the elevations and a rendering of that proposed structure. Next slide. Moving into what guidelines it meets or does not meet. The primary structure will have a footprint of 62 feet 3 inches and 19 feet. Or by 19 feet, and an overall height of 29 feet 6 inches, which is consistent with the range of building footprints and heights found within the district and immediate block context. The structure will be set back 20 feet 6 inches from the street, again aligning with the surrounding setback patterns found on this block. Next slide. The building features simple nested gable form with tall, narrow proportions. Its overall massing and form draw from inspiration from Queen Anne style buildings found in this historic context and in the immediate block context. Next slide. Landmark staff has noted that the building has a very traditional style and appearance for a new structure, and we do encourage the applicant to address kind of the matchiness in phase 2, potentially through the use of modern materials to help delineate it as a new infill structure. The proposed roof form is simple, and the design incorporates tall and narrow windows with arrangements and rhythms similar to those found in historic buildings in the Wolf Place Historic District. And the primary entrance is located beneath the front porch and is oriented towards the street. Next slide. The building also includes a quarter width shed roof porch with a footprint of 6 feet by 6 feet. The porch form and placement, as well as its scale, are consistent with the surrounding historic properties in the block context as well as in the historic district. Next slide. So staff is recommending approval of phase 1 mass forming context, citing guidelines 4.1 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.9, 4.15, and 4.16.
Thank you, Jesse. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Ours.
In the rendering on page 11, where's the existing picture?
It should be on that. Yeah. I don't know why they didn't include it. It's just maybe they didn't include it in the rendering because they were focusing on in this application set primary structure.
Any other questions? Bree?
So you had mentioned that this being phase 1 and we're mainly looking at the form and massing, but you had made a comment about Landmark feeling that there was opportunity for it to be less matchy. So by that you mean the materiality?
Yes, correct. And that would be reviewed during phase 2. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're ready to hear from the applicants again. You don't need to reintroduce yourself, but you're welcome to come up and we'll get your presentation loaded and let you know when we're ready. I'll just take this opportunity to apologize for all the construction noise. It's something that we wish was not occurring, but don't have any control over, so.
Yeah, to jump right into it, I just wanted to give you guys an overview of the design process that we went through and taking our clients' needs and matching them with the formal concerns of the historic district. So coming up with a pretty traditional form will definitely, as Jesse said, be addressing the concerns of making it look more contemporary in the phase 2 of the material with certain specific materials, including some metals like on that covered entry roof portion, as well as some of the like lighter brick elements. The other main constraint that we've had in coming up with a form that does fit into this streetscape context was just the large side setbacks that we have to address with current zoning. So that ends up leaving us with a very narrow footprint. So going back and forth with Jesse and the board, we've come up with a few design motifs, including the brick banding and the window proportions that we tried to give it a larger, wider stature on the site and not feel too tall and narrow.
So the mass and form does fit within Denver zoning guidelines, so there's no variances or shape adjustments required. We're meeting the maximum height as well, so in order to comply with the side setbacks, the maximum height We really wanted to incorporate the nested gable idea in the mass and scale. So that's, we've done this block study and looked at all the different designs existing on in the Wolf Place Historic District that are similar in shape and scale to what we're presenting to you today.
You could probably flip a couple slides. I think we've seen most. Maybe one more. And yeah, just to get a sense of the streetscape, I know we saw this continuing some variety through the block. This particular form isn't mimicking any forms that are on this streetscape, so I think it provides a nice variety, but still addressing that historic context on Mead Street particularly. That's it. Just wanted to say thank you again to Jesse and the team for all of the collaboration throughout this process. It was definitely eye-opening to me to see all that you guys do to ensure that these historic districts remain true to their character. So thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants about the infill project? Clear.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify something about the RNO letter. It seems reading through this that they maybe didn't have, as is kind of going back to the previous thing, but it seems that they didn't necessarily have the full information about the garage, and that was kind of their main concern for not recommending approval. Is that the case that they just, that was misdeveloped, or yeah?
That's a good question, Jesse. This went to them, the garage didn't go to them, is that right?
Oh yeah, they just didn't review it at all.
Yeah, so purview for the RNO is only for new construction, top additions and ADUs. The remedial plan for the existing structure on the site, which we converted into a garage, is not included as part of that. It's its own separate application.
Okay, and did you guys meet with the RNO at all?
We didn't. This was submitted to them, and we received an email really late after the submission.
The other thing in regards to the process was that we completed the phase 1 of the primary structure. Real Architecture completed that before we jumped on the remediation plan, so that's why there was a bit of discrepancies there, but we've now taken that into our whole scope of work. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much for your time. Jesse, any follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear again, you know, RNO, I know that they were very detailed in their letter about the existing historic structure on the lot. That's not within their purview to review. They did provide comment on it. And I would say that there are many alley houses that exist in our historic districts, and this is not the first time that we've reviewed the addition of a tandem structure in front of a historic alley house. In the past, it is something that we do allow. The applicants are proposing through that remedial plan to restore the existing historic structure on the lot as a contributing structure and would have to come before you all if it were proposed for demolition. It's already come before the commission in the past and was denied for demolition requests. So, you know, staff has made it very clear to the owner that demolition of the historic structure is not a possibility, but we would consider a review of the new tandem house primary structure on the lot.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, what did everyone think?
I guess I'll jump in since, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to understand if the RNO had specific objections to the placement of this new structure blocking the view of the historic structure, which is, I'm going through again, it seems like that's not necessarily their concern. It was more just they didn't have the ability to review the plan for the rear structure, and they don't seem to have much to say about the new structure
I'll just to add to that, it seemed, this is a very narrow lot and they have very little room to work with for a
Yeah.
primary. So it's maybe too bad that it seems like it'll pretty much block the view of that lovely little porch on the historic building, but much room to work with, so.
Yeah, I concur with the staff report, and I think as far as mass form and context, I think this does everything in the guidelines, and I think there are some questions around details, but deal with that next round.
Is there any other thoughts?
I agree with Larry.
Same.
Yeah, the form is, the study that they provided of, street context of the other forms and forms that the commission sees a lot. I think that for a modern build project, this one does a really good job of responding to those forms in kind. But again, per the guidelines, it doesn't feel like it's trying to exactly replicate its existing neighbors. You can definitely tell that it is a modern home, so I'll be curious to see some of the detailing.
All right, if there are no other comments, would someone like to make a motion?
Why do we all not make motions?
We're just waiting.
I feel like I'm the only one in the minutes, like every time.
I move to approve application 2025 COA 716 for new construction phase 1 mass form and context at 3034 North Mead Street as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.9, 4.15, 4.16. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Chris is opposed. All right, so the motion passes. You have been approved for phase 1. So we'll see you for phase 2. Great. Our next project for design review is at the McNichols Building at 144 West Colfax Avenue in the Civic Center Historic District. Hearing from Rick.
Okay, so our next project is for a window replacement on the south facade of the McNichols Building in the Civic Center Historic District, which has a period of significance of 1909 to 1979. The McNichols Building is really the only building within the Civic Center Historic District, but it is not the only structure within the district. Or park, I should say. There are many buildings within the district. So here is the south elevation of the McNichols Building. This is the elevation in question. So the building was originally built as the Carnegie Library in 1909. And then in 1956, Denver Water moved into the McNichols Building when the library moved across the street to its current location. And when Denver Water moved into the McNichols Building, they made several alterations to the building. Many of these alterations have been reversed. However, these 1956, 1957 alterations are only still expressed on this south elevation, in which blonde brick was infilled onto the south facade and aluminum windows were placed into the south facade, and significant alterations were made into the interior floor plate. So in 2015, 2016, the McNichols Building underwent extensive renovation aimed at restoring many of its original architectural features. So all of the alterations made by Denver Water that covered up all of its glorious 1909 original architectural details and windows were removed from most elevations, with the exception of this south elevation. And this is where the only place where you can see these 1956, 1957 alterations still remain. So Landmark staff felt that this facade really honors the evolution of the building and change of use that the McNichols underwent, and does reflect the changes that have occurred, and does show those changes and the change of uses to the building. So when talking with the applicants, we did encourage them to replicate the appearance of these aluminum windows in the south facade, as there were going to be no changes to the opening proportions on this facade. So these are not the original opening proportions on this facade. Originally, they were much larger opening proportions, and again, that is a result of interior changes to the floor plates made by Denver Water and infilling of this facade with that blonde brick infill. So again, no changes to the opening proportions. So because there were no changes proposed to the proportions of these openings, we felt it was really significant to alter or to respect the aluminum windows that were on these elevations. So in total, 38 windows on the south facade and some on the sides of the south facade will be replaced, and there are 4 distinct style aluminum windows on this elevation that will be replaced. So here you can see the first, second, and third floor where these windows will be replaced on the south facade, and again some on the sides of that facade as well, where that bump out exists. No changes will be made to the opening proportions, with a small exception of a door on the first floor. I do have a better picture to show that. The Civic Center design guidelines do encourage using the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic buildings. The standards do encourage minimal changes to historic buildings that respect distinctive material spaces and relationships that characterize historic properties. Again, Landmark staff feel that this facade represents a significant change that the building underwent in the 50s and still represents that change. The proposed modifications to the south facade represent the pattern, dimensions, and scale of the 1950s windows arrangements, which are about 70 years old in their own right now, so may have historical significance. And this approach preserves the narrative of the building's continued use from a library to a transition into the Denver's Water Board building, and now to its continued use into potentially restaurant, museum, cultural spaces, etc. So here is that elevation of the south facade. That door in question that will be converted back into a window is this door right here. So again, this was originally a window. It will go back to a window. So it will just, that will be the only change to proportions, but that is encouraged by our design guidelines. So it is in compliance with guideline 2.14, which encourages maintaining the pattern and proportion of historic windows and doors. Again, in alignment with the 1950s, 56 patterns and proportions, because there will be no changes to that infill that was made in the 50s. As I already mentioned, there are 4 distinct window sizes and types. The applicant has meticulously documented those types. So you have window type 1, window type 2, and then window type 3, and it has a subtype 3A. I'm just calling them 4 types because they're 4 types, but it's a subtype of A. So the applicant has meticulously documented those types, as you can see here on the screen, and then they will be matched in proportion. Really, the only change is that the current windows are operable. They will be non-operable with this replacement. That is not a major concern, as the mullion mutton patterns will be matched. Windows will be inset into the wall plane from the exterior. The inset will look similar. I will let the applicant talk about how from the interior that will be slightly different, but as we only have purview from the exterior it will look very similar. So that is in compliance with guideline 2.6 and 2.9. The current windows are in anodized aluminum, and they will be replaced to match. Again, these windows are 70 years old, aluminum windows, so they have reached their lifespan. They are ready to be replaced. So therefore, we are recommending approval as we feel that this is a significant elevation that does represent change to the use of the McNichols building that is potentially historic in its own right. And as we are not proposing to go back to the original 1909 appearance of the south elevation, we feel it's important to respect this 1950s alteration to the south elevation, and thus are recommending approval of the replacement of these 38 windows on the south elevation with new aluminum windows to match the existing.
Great, thank you, Brittany. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff before we hear from them?
General question, do we have photos of what this looked like prior to the restoration?
You read my mind.
We
I
do
realize
have-
I've
Okay, we do have some photos. I can send them to you.
Great, just pure curiosity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I will send them to you after this meeting.
All right, thank you, Brittany. We are ready to hear from the applicants. If you would please begin with your name, and again, you have 10 minutes. Are we good?
I am ready.
Okay, so we're ready for you whenever you are ready.
Thank you. My name is Dan Ritter. I'm the architect with Jacobs Engineering. We're the architect of record on the project. I'd like to thank all of you, LPC, for having me, and Brittany for guiding us through this process. I will be repeating a lot of things that Brittany said because she eloquently put it. The project, as mentioned, is on Civic Center Park, XI. Just some context, as she mentioned, it opened up as the Carnegie Library. This McNichols building was the first building on the park. It was part of the City Beautiful movement back in the early 1900s. In the 1950s, it went through the renovation to the parks office, and at that point, there was a lot of interior renovation that occurred. As she mentioned, the plates were changed, the stacks were removed, obviously. So the interior use of the building was sort of keeping in context with the exterior use of the building. So in the 1950s is when the original windows that we are talking about today were replaced, and some of the openings were replaced as well. And then in 2016, that's when the arts and venue renovation occurred, which you see today, including the assembly spaces on the second and third floors, and then our renovation that we're proposing on the ground level. Next slide. So here's the window replacement that occurred in 2011 on the north, east, and west facades. The original windows were from the 1950s. You can see in the top photo, the openings were adjusted for those windows, and then it was sort of pulled back to the original 1910 design. And this included the openings, the frames, and the material. And the only thing that we could tell was that if there was any operability in the original windows, there's no operability now. Next slide. And so this gets into our project scope. The top picture is from the 1950s. It's not very clear, but it does show the openings that were used, and it's sort of pulled back far enough that you can't really tell if those were if the louvers and the infills have occurred at that point, or if it's still from the original library. So just to give a little sense of context, the existing conditions are in the bottom photos, which do show all of the windows, and then also the areas that have been infilled and that have included louvers as well. And as we've mentioned, the use of the interior space has dictated a lot of the what happened with the windows, and I just wanted to point out just the mechanical code as well. dictating natural ventilation and whatnot has progressed, obviously, from the 1950s. So this is one of the reasons that we're not proposing any additional openings, and we're also understanding that the operability of the windows is okay to remove just due to all of the mechanical necessities. Next slide, please. And then just to repeat what Brittany stated as well, we went through and meticulously documented the existing windows, mutton placement, the frame placement, the existing windows, as she mentioned, they're a very unique aluminum frame, about 1 inch in thickness. So it was good to understand how that occurred and where that occurred within the shell of the building as well. So we did go through, next slide. Go through these sort of quickly, just through and documented all 4 of the window types that Brittany mentioned as well. Next slide. And one component that we are going to maintain is the window box, essentially feature of the windows, and making sure that the new windows are placed in the same horizontal orientation. So the depth of the sill on the exterior will maintain, where on the inside is where we'll make up any room that could occur from the difference of frame style that we're going to use. We have been working with the manufacturer, Manco Windows. They do a lot of historical window replacement. Their frame is about 2 to 3 inches thick, so that will be taken up on the interior. We have plenty of room, and the areas on the interior don't use the windows. It's assembly spaces that there's a lot of room to work with on the inside. So that's where we plan to take up any space and thus maintaining all the aesthetics of the existing conditions. And with this one item on the ground level, they do have the metal bars that you see in the right-hand picture. We do intend to rehab those and replace them, so that'll be the same. Next slide, please. Going through the plans, just showing the locations of all the 38 windows. Petition, next slide. The existing elevation against the proposed elevation. Again, everything is intended to be like for like, including the materials, which is the aluminum, clear anodized aluminum. And the only thing that would be changing is the operability. Next slide. East and west elevations. That's it. Next slide.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, did you guys do any openings in the existing windows? Do you know what the rough opening conditions are?
So it's a limestone granite building. So the sill is a granite sill. So we're fairly confident that when we pull the window out, we're going to have a similar condition or a good firm condition to install. The jambs, we don't know what that is. We're assuming it's some stone material as well.
So is it a storefront frame?
No, this would be closer to like a residential frame.
So how do you like secure the frame into the adjacent masonry, I guess is what I'm asking.
There would be some masonry anchors that would go through the frame.
Through a subframe or through the frame of the window?
I don't know, based on the model that we're proposing, I don't know exactly how that installation occurs.
Have you guys considered any like flashing or sill pans or anything like that, or is it?
Yeah, we would want to look at we would want to see what the conditions are when we pull the window out, but then put in appropriate flashing to make sure it's weather tight. Thanks.
Any other questions, Les?
Metal bars are restore and reinstall or restore?
Restore and reinstall. And we're intending to use the same sort of masonry openings that are already there, so we're not creating any new holes.
Were those from the same period when the windows were?
That's a good question. As far as we can tell, they are.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Brittany, any recap or? Commissioners, what are your thoughts? Very straightforward. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that there's this one glimpse into another use of the building and getting those windows right for this era of this particular design. Makes sense to me.
It's a rare case when replacing windows with aluminum contemporary commercial units are, a super logical way to go about it. So.
Yeah. All right, if there are no other comments, would someone like to make a motion?
So yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for helping me out.
Madam Chair, I move to approve application 2025-COA-970 for window replacement at 144 West Colfax Avenue, McNichols Building, as per Civic Center Design Guidelines 6, Denver Landmark Structures and Districts Design Guidelines 2.14, 2.16, 2.19, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in staff report.
Thank you, Nick. Do you have a second? Second. Thank you, Bree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. You've been approved. Right, we have one more design review project. This is 2847 Curtis Street in the Curtis Park F Historic District. Yeah, you're right. It is Stout. Yeah. Stout Street.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. 2847 Stout Street in the Curtis Park F Historic District, and we will hear from Amy.
Sorry for that typo. Amy Avedon representing Landmark staff. 2847 Stout Street. We're here to discuss a review that you've probably never had on your agenda before, which is reconstruction of the historic walls of a house that is in a landmark district. So this particular home here, this image is from 2020, is in the Curtis Park F district, and it was built in 1887. Next slide, please. This home was reviewed starting around 2020 by previous Landmark Commission members, probably none of you. And a previous homeowner came before the commission with some plans to remodel the home. And the commission at that time approved an addition and an ADU. That project was never built. The property sold. And the current owners then prepared a revised plan that was very similar, a little bit scaled back, no ADU, that staff approved. In 2023-24, Crystal Marquez was the staff planner on that. And the project really tried to bring the home closer to its original appearance. You saw in that 2020 photo that was stucco in the home, windows had been replaced, and the approved project used images like this 1976 photo from Denver Public Library to try to bring the home back from a rather altered appearance. So on the right, you see the approved elevation. A permit was issued early in 2025, and the construction began. Next image, please. In May of this year, Crystal received a call from Sustainable Design Build, the contractor. She was asked to come to the site because they had concerns about the stability of the structure. So Crystal did go to the site. We talked about some concerns, certainly didn't want her to be in any compromised position there. Crystal went to the property. I believe she, I think Crystal took these pictures, and she was kind of standing outside of the building, perhaps towards the back, looking from the location where an addition would occur. At that point, Obviously the interior finishes and the exterior finishes had been removed from the structure. You see a contractor there kind of showing her concerns about the walls. And Crystal directed to please stabilize the building, come up with a plan for what should be done next to address their concerns and get back to us. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, what occurred next was that our landmark inspector, who's no longer with the team, happened to go by the site a few weeks later, and the original walls of the building were not there anymore. New walls had been framed and they were holding the historic roof in place, which was not something that we wanted to see, and we had not been contacted, just discovered this. So this is the worst of the images you're going to see here, and I'll pause for a moment to say that this is the, I guess I'll say, only point of disagreement that I'm going to talk about between Landmark staff's position and the applicant and contractor in this case. We're disappointed that we weren't contacted at this point. I'm going to go on to talk about why this occurred, and we do understand that there are reasons why the walls collapsed, and there are some very unique circumstances here, but we are disappointed we weren't contacted. We've talked to you before about a lot of concerns we have with violations in the field. We want to improve our communications with contractors. Jesse White and I have had a lot of discussions about our future hopes for contractor training programs and different ways we want to improve communication. We need to be called. Crystal was on the site. She talked to the contractors and said, please let us know. Here's what we'd like you to do. So we have, unfortunately, through the layoffs that occurred with the city of Denver, we have lost our landmark dedicated inspector, which is a step backwards in executing those things I've just described. We're concerned, but we remain committed to trying to work together with people. We don't want to be viewed as we want people to feel comfortable calling us when something goes wrong. So again, this is like the worst moment in the story I'm telling you. But we did discover that the walls of the building had collapsed. Next slide, please. Some of the reasons why this occurred is that this building had a very unique construction method. What you see here, and this is obviously before the collapse occurred, is that the building was constructed using a technique called brick nogging. And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot in the last few days. And on the line here, we have Zach McKendry from Sustainable Design Build. And Zach and I have had some conversations in the last few days. He's learned a lot as well. And I know that Zach did not intend, as a representative of his company, for this to happen either. This has been determined to be an involuntary demolition. An intentional demolition of a landmark structure is a very serious violation of the municipal code and has consequences. That is not what anyone believes happened here. You will see in some of these pictures, they were in the middle of roughing in their electrical. I believe Zach will tell you they had windows installed, that materials were lost. No one meant for this to happen. But I'll just briefly describe to you why it did happen, at least from what we understand. I told you there was a previous owner of the building who had brought forward a project. And in fact, at one point, they even proposed to demolish the building. And looking back in some records, they had Atkinson Noland, which is a very reputable preservation firm on this site, in around 2020. Atkinson Noland looked at the building and described it as a single wide masonry structure. They did not recognize, or maybe they weren't really looking that deep, how this was built. This is a wood frame building with brick infilled between the wood framing. And as I tried to fill in here, it's brick set in mortar between the wood studs. The bricks are not mechanically fastened to the wood framing. They're generally held in place just by friction between the framing. They tend to send moisture in the direction of the framing, so they can cause the framing to start to rot. They're to some extent held in place by the sandwich of the finishes that are on the inside and the outside of the wall. They do have some advantages. There are reasons why this technique was used, and I tried to list some of those there. They created an air barrier, a fire barrier. form of insulation, moisture and wind barrier, rodent protection. As far as I know, they were typically used in certain regions of the country. As I think back, I got my master's in preservation in Boston. I saw this probably in first period houses from the 1600s. I've listed here, terms, I'm not going to try to pronounce these words, German words. It's used in Germanic communities, in Creole houses. I've never seen this in Colorado. I don't think any of the rest of the team has seen this in Colorado. It may have been used here because of the person who built this house. Again, Atkinson Nolan didn't expect this here. This contractor didn't expect this here. I think it was found when they took the finishes off. They had to mitigate for asbestos because this house had stucco, asbestos containing 20th century stucco on the outside of this wall that they removed as part of this process. And again, when they took these finishes off, here was this, Jen described it as the jelly in the sandwich. Did not have any shear wall strength anymore. That's when they called Crystal to the site. I wish we had all been a little more ahead of this to think about what should the sequence have been to remove these finishes, when should some sort of shear wall support or some sort of reinforcement been installed. That's not what happened. There are some photos in your packet where they did try to do some bracing. You see some pictures in the presentation here. It didn't work. We should have been called, but I don't know, given the situation, that there was an easy way to prevent it, given that it wasn't an anticipated condition. We had some very tense conversations between staff, contractor, owner, attorney's office in September, October. We brought Michaela Finn Harbor, who is the residential plan supervisor, and at that point she was acting as the zoning administrator, so we didn't have one. Into the discussion, she made the determination it was involuntary demolition, which is a very formalized term in our code. That allowed us to come before you so that you could approve a reconstruction of the walls. You have to approve that for it to proceed. It's important for the owner to receive that approval because the walls of the building are very close to the property line. So that they need a series of approvals here in order to get their project going again. It's been stopped since May. That's not good for the neighborhood. It's not good for them. Not good for the contractor, and so on. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess one last thing I didn't get to on the slide. One of the decisions that was made in the staff approval and the previous discussions with the LPC is to install clapboard on the outside of this house. It was stucco up until 2020. This type of construction typically did have clapboard nailed right to the outside of these studs. So those were good assumptions that were made by the previous decision makers here. When I spoke to Zach, the contractor, earlier today, he said when they removed the asbestos stucco, there was nothing under it. So that does suggest that clapboard was a good decision. So I think in the end here, we will have a good replication of the previous structure. Next slide. So the decision you're being asked to make, you're looking here at a section of the project where you have the historic structure in the front and the approved addition, and the wall section there in the historic building was supposed to have been the masonry that has collapsed, and now it will be a 2x6 wall with closed cell spray insulation. That is the approval you're being asked to make at this point. It was always going to have new smooth composite siding on the outside. That will still be the case. As far as the public experience of the building, it's going to be the same thing it always was. It will, from an authenticity point of view, not be the structural wall that it was going to be. That isn't something that the public will ever know. But from our perspective as preservationists, there's some loss of authenticity. But we will still have mass and scale, the experience of that structure in the context of the neighborhood, and that's important. And otherwise, it would be a loss that we don't, as staff, want to see happen. So, complicated discussion. We regret that this all happened, but we do understand why it happened. Certainly in talking to the contractor, I think they feel a lot of regret. I think Zach will speak for himself. he wanted to be here today and for personal reasons could not. But we've had a lot of hindsight discussions about why this happened. And next slide, our recommendation is that you approve the reconstruction of the walls.
Thank you, Amy. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I've seen this one other place, at the Navarre, actually, the Anschutz, that's partially built in this, with this construction. The thing that they did was they installed the brick after the cladding, meaning so they put the cladding up to give it that support, that structural support, and then filled with brick, right? And I was wondering if there's any evidence that the evidence we found was that the mortar was squished up against the back of the cladding, and I was wondering if you saw, if anybody saw, if that was any evidence of that, to where it was infilled later.
I think so. We can go back a couple slides and Zach can speak to that, but the if you were to zoom in there, I think the mortar looks pretty clean, but you can speak to that.
I tried zooming in too, and I couldn't really tell.
I did ask because when they took the stucco, which as I said was a 20th century application off, they didn't destroy the surface of the brick, and I asked why, and he said because they didn't want to aerosolize the asbestos, they had to very carefully take it off. And I think those contractors should work in historic preservation because it looks like the brick was well preserved. But let's let Zach tell you what he thought of whether the brick was put on after up against the siding or something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a
Lars?
question. So the sequence was they called somebody from the city came out and then it was demolished and then they cleaned it up. The city would have liked it a call.
Yeah, we would have liked to have been told the wall collapsed. Yeah.
And then what's the condition of the other three walls? I'm sure you said it.
All of the walls. I think again, Zach should probably answer. I believe at some point when the wall was unstable, they framed new walls inboard of that. And then the exterior walls collapsed, but I think he needs to answer that question. And that's when we found the roof was being held up by newly framed walls.
Which is probably a little emergency action just to keep the roof up. Yeah, I guess it's hard, right? Because he calls you guys up and then he waits and then the rest of the building collapses. You don't want to work in the site.
And I think it was a dangerous situation, so we're
For
sympathetic
sure,
to that.
I mean, thankfully it hurt.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I think we're ready to hear from the applicant.
And I'm just gonna stay sitting here because of how complicated it is.
Yep. So you're joining us virtually, Zach, and whenever you're ready, you can begin. Unmute yourself, and if you would just introduce yourself, please, and then you'll have 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Zach McKendry. I'm with Sustainable Design Build. I apologize, I can't be there in person. I had a family issue this week, so we've got some unexpected travel time today. So yeah, very regrettable situation. I grew up maintaining a historic building at 1477 Columbine Street for most of my life into my mid-20s, and care very much about our historic structures in town and wish to maintain our neighborhoods and the characters that make Denver special. As Amy mentioned, this nogging, that is a new terminology for me. I've never encountered that before. I've seen quite a bit of creative stuff on older houses, but never encountered this exact circumstance. So we had asbestos on the inside plaster and asbestos on the exterior stucco kind of parge coating. We really carefully selected the remediation company that was doing this because we'd worked with them in the past, and I was confident that they could go in and get it done without doing unnecessary damage to the house. And they did. That was successful. Unfortunately, with this nogging condition, the original nominal 2x4s that were the framing structure, and then the masonry infill, those 2x4s were almost essentially just completely gone. My mom's from the Southeast, and I've spent a bit of time down in the South, so I'm used to termites. I'm very thankful we don't have a lot of termites here. But the condition of those original 2x4s is, I would compare it very similar to like excessive termite damage. It was, you could push your finger through the timbers. So we did have Crystal out on site. Those new walls that are erected that you see in that really sad picture of all those walls gone, those are the shoring that was put in place to keep the historic roof from coming down. My subcontractor that I used on site, he's frankly the best framer I've ever been privileged to work with. I think there were some decisions that were made in a moment of panic. They knew it was a historic site, and they had been framing the back, the new portion that was approved, and we're going to do the siding once the asbestos remediation was done. And I think it came down in a pretty catastrophic manner once they took the weight from the roof off of that nogging condition in those walls and the old rotten 2x4s. And you can see those shoring walls are inset pretty significantly from the edge of that floor membrane there where the walls used to stand. So I think, understandably, our guy freaked out when it fell down, and I've never had that happen as a foreman when I was standing on a site. I've never had it happen to any of my construction sites in the past, and I would love to not be in front of you discussing this, but here we are. Our intention is to reconstruct it in a compliant manner and really get this home's been derelict for a very long time. I've spent a considerable portion through the planning phase trying to keep unplanned guests from starting fires in that living room area and keeping themselves warm during the winter, just trying to keep the site clean and safe. And I would be very eager to just complete the structure and have another functional home on the street after having a residence that's out of use for such a significant portion of time. And what seems like was they had multiple violations before we got involved and took the site on this address. So again, spent a lot of my time working on a historic building in Denver. I'm a 5th generation native here, and my people have been building for a long time. Definitely not any part of the conversation that I would like to be having with you folks, but would very much like to get that residence back in use for the owner and for the neighborhood. And to speak to the specific question about the masonry, from the exterior photos, I would think if they put that masonry condition in with the cladding already installed on the exterior, you would see that kind of mortar pancake out against the cladding. I don't see anything like it. Was actually very clean. All those, while they're not like a fully finished exterior like you'd see in a single white brick wall, it does look like it was completed before any exterior element was established. And just built in place like this, and then they finished the outside. And, that asbestos parge coating did come off without taking a lot of the mortar and stuff with it and damaging the bricks. So I don't know what the in-between condition was from the original construction to that stucco condition. A hard lesson for us as a builder about how to navigate kind of what feels like conflicting interests between the landmark board and certainly maintaining historical sites and the Denver building department's mandate for mitigating that asbestos. Hopefully I never encounter a condition like this, but in the future I would we'll be much more careful and do more discovery work to make certain we aren't entering into a condition that we're not aware of underneath the asbestos, with that asbestos plaster really holding those walls together in that historic structure.
All right, thank you very much. You addressed one question that was raised, but do we have any other questions for the applicant? Lars.
So the new walls, are they on the old foundation?
Yes.
The sheet 4.0 is missing from the set, and their detail 2 goes through that new exterior wall. So I'm just curious, since it doesn't show it in the drawings, what is the new exterior wall assembly?
That will be 2x6 with the sheathing and exterior cladding that will be compliant with the original appearance. Unfortunately, the composition will be different, but that will be 2x6, so we can achieve modern insulation standards for those walls.
Just for clarification, the drawings that are in your packet are just select sheets that will be swapped into the full plan set.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much for your time and explanation of this. Amy, any other further recap? Okay. All right, commissioners, we move into deliberation on this. Everyone's thoughts. I'll say I've heard of this construction method, but I had never seen examples of it, and very astonishing. Too bad that it was lost.
I just Googled it, and there's a whole lot of what you think of when you think of like Elizabethan England. That's what this is. There's a lot of buildings not here. Yeah.
That's what's kind of surprising about it, is that, yeah, I've heard of it in the context of like timber frame.
Yes, right.
Where the wood members are, big enough to be able to support themselves should the noggin kind of lose its integrity. But yeah, this didn't seem like it quite. It's a little bit of a basket weave of both.
Yeah, and it looks like the wood would have diagonals and it would be more of a herringbone. I think some European built this for himself. It's not, and it was more of a home build, it looks like.
Do you think that third element, which is we have the brick and fill and the wood and then the diaphragm of whatever the cladding or the interior plaster is what keeps it structurally sound? And I think once that was gone, it was pretty much a lost hope.
There was nothing holding here, it just fell out.
Yeah.
I've seen it in New Orleans, but it was made with like structural cypress, which is a very different condition.
Yeah, I could see where that would be intimidating to somebody who hasn't seen it before, and then they saw some partial collapse and would freak out. And I'm sure I would do the same.
Yeah. It sounds like we're all very understanding of how this came to be, and is would anyone like to make a motion, or if are there further thoughts that you would like to discuss?
Go ahead and make a motion. Madam Chair, I move to approve application number 2025-COA-1003 for the reconstruction of the exterior walls of the historic structure at 2847 Stout Street as per design guideline 2.4, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Larry. Do we have a second?
No, second.
Thank you, Chris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes and the project has been approved. Thank you. All right, as I mentioned, I need to recuse myself for the business item on the agenda, so I will let Larry take over and I will recuse myself from the meeting. Hope everyone has good holidays.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions.
Oh, yeah.
Also, we don't have a staff person yet. I'm not sure where Kara is. She might be joining virtually.
Sounds very
Season.
Yes, it's like perfect time for dogging.
All right, so we will begin the business items portion of the meeting. This next item here is, business items are items that require a vote and action from the commission. These items may include a presentation from an applicant and Landmark staff. So I will announce each business item on the agenda and staff will introduce the items. The applicant will make their presentation, which is limited to 10 minutes, and then we, as commissioners, may question the applicant, take staff clarifications if necessary, then we will deliberate and make a motion and vote. So the next item is, oh, lost the, oh yeah, it doesn't have a COA number. Okay, so it's for the National Register nomination for 3333 South Colorado Boulevard, the Welshire Golf Course. Welshire. What's the preferred?
People say both. Wow, you guys, that was the fastest motion I've ever had. It took, and the time it took me to get up the stairs, you were already done. But good afternoon, commissioners. We normally do these National Register nominations on the consent agenda. And the reason we pulled it off today is not because we have an issue with the nomination, but as an opportunity for former Councilwoman Kendra Black to talk to you all about Welshire's 100th anniversary and everything that's going on with that. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the Welshire Golf Course. It is being nominated for the National Register of Historic Places. It's an 18-hole golf course encompassing 134 acres in southeastern Colorado, Denver, Colorado. It was designed by renowned golf course architect Donald Ross and constructed in 1926. Initially, it was the Welshire Country Club and was intended to be a major, attractant for development down in that area. But after the Great Depression, it was the city of Denver took ownership of the country club and turned it into a municipal golf course. It's a really fascinating history of golf that Erica, our commissioner, has written. And if you are interested at all, or even if you're not interested in golf, I would highly recommend taking a read of the application. So under the city ownership, the course had several improvements, but still retains the core original course design that was done by Donald Ross. It also includes an altered 1927 Tudor Revival clubhouse that has had multiple additions, so that's not being considered a contributing feature of the golf course. Another really important thing is that the golf course is locally significant under criterion A in the area of Black ethnic heritage, with a period of significance from 1937 to 1959 for its association with the integration and equity goals of the Denver Civil Rights Movement, and the unique and sometimes underrated roles that golf courses in particular played in that movement. I think we hear a lot about the Willis Case Golf Course being one of the first integrated golf courses in Denver, but Welshire also should be noted for that. It's also where golfer Bill Wright won the U.S. Golf Association's 1959 U.S. Amateur Public Links Championship, and he became the first Black player to win a USGA tournament here at Welshire. So Landmark staff does find the application to be complete, and we are recommending that the National Register nomination be forwarded to the keeper. But now I'd like to turn it over, if you'd like to talk a little bit about.
You want me to come over?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So real quick, does anybody have any questions for staff? All right.
Sorry, it was the first integrated golf course?
I don't think it was the first integrated in Denver, but it was one of the early.
But the most significant thing is that Bill Wright was the first Black person to ever win a USGA tournament. So he is the Jackie Robinson of golf. And he actually died a few years ago. The New York Times wrote a half-page article about him. I mean, it was very significant. And Arnold Palmer played there, and Ben Hogan won a 6th consecutive tournament there, which was something not repeated again until Tiger Woods did that in 2006. General Eisenhower was in the audience when that happened. So a lot of interesting things happened there. The developers of the golf course were George Olinger and Lloyd Fullenwire.
Sorry, Kendra, can we pause a second? Can you introduce yourself and then I'm gonna start your time?
Yeah.
I'm Kendra Black. I am part of a community group who's planning a 100th anniversary celebration of Welshire. I live in the neighborhood, and I'm also the former Denver City Council person who represented this part of the city. Anyway, Welshire has a very interesting history, and when the city bought it, it wasn't even in Denver, it was in Arapahoe County. And the Highline Canal goes through it, and the history of the Highline Canal is also a very significant part of the history of our city and moving water, and that's the reason there's even a golf course there, is because they have that water made available by the Highline Canal. And so the community is planning a celebration in June of next year. There'll be a tournament and then a community celebration that night for everyone, not just golfers. And I am working on the history part of it, and hopefully I'm gonna get a grant and we're gonna put some permanent historical displays there. You've probably seen the display that was done at City Park Golf Course, and their new clubhouse is pretty cool. It cost $100,000, so I don't think we're gonna be able to have something that nice, but I'm hoping that we can have something there so that when non-golfers go to use the event center where they have weddings and stuff, they'll understand the history of the course and understand why this large Tudor building is there on Colorado Boulevard. It's very sad that the Tudor building does not qualify as contributing. It's just been so adulterated by the concessionaire with the permission of the city, but it is a non-contributing structure.
And you guys have been working with both Denver Parks and Recreation and Council District for on this nomination. So Parks is well aware of this nomination.
Yes, it was it was supposed to be submitted when I was still the council person, and Michael Hancock approved it, and then it didn't get done. And somebody else had to be hired to finish it. I guess it's on your commission. I didn't realize that. Yeah, so it would be a huge honor to be on the registry. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything to it. It's really just honorific, but I think it would be really nice for our city to have that.
Well, if that is it for your presentation. Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
Is there any other work plan besides just the plaques or the commemorative type stuff?
I will clarify, I am not the applicant. I'm just a knowledgeable person. Just the celebration. Yeah, the city's really not being a part of the celebration or doing the historical displays, but I'm working with some historians, the people who actually did the city park one. And so we kind of know what we want to do. If we can get some money, it'll be really nice. If we can't get some money, it'll be a little more DIY. But it's a great story that really contributes to the growth and expansion of our city. And then also, you know, the culture aspect is really interesting too.
Great, well, thank you so much for your presentation, and yeah, we will now enter our deliberation. Yes. Yeah, so yeah, deliberation. What do commissioners think?
As we've seen a few nominations come through for other sites, one thing I noted about this one that I thought was wonderful to include, even though the clubhouse is not one of the contributing structures, I appreciated the additional photos that were provided of it and also of the interior, because as was mentioned, the exterior has been noticeably changed. Views are obstructed of some of the existing components. But it was really nice to just have that additional imagery to really capture some of those architectural elements and that language that is still on the site, even if it's not one of the contributing factors.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, overall, this is a very strong application. I mean, it only requires, I believe, meeting one criteria, but it has clearly two criteria that it meets: the history and the Black cultural history. So yeah, I think it's a kind of slam dunk. All right, well, does anyone want to make a motion?
I haven't made one yet today, so I move to recommend that the National Register nomination for the Wellshire Golf Course at 3333 South Broadway be forwarded to the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places per presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Then I want to make a friendly amendment that the address, I believe, is 3333 South Colorado Boulevard.
So sorry.
Which is
That's in Englewood.
Not your bad.
No,
Yes.
I was just, being a trained monkey, reading what's in front of me,
So yes, so do you accept the amendment?
I do accept your friendly
And do you
amendment.
accept the amendment? The amendment has been accepted by both Elizabeth and Nick. And by the way, yes, it was Nick with the seconding for the record. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
I'm gonna make one comment about the pronunciation. If you're interested.
Absolutely.
People say
Yeah.
Wilshire and Welshire, but George Olinger, this was his idea, he actually developed Bonnie Bray, which has curvy streets, and he platted out the neighborhood also with curvy streets because he wanted it to be like a small Scottish village. And so he probably would say, well, Shire.
Also, there are really cool mid-century houses in this neighborhood. If you've never been down there, they're really cool.
Yeah, some nice ones.
Would recommend.
Great, well,
Thank you.
excellent, thank you. All right, we do not have any discussion items today. And we don't have any other additional items. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 2:55 PM. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.